Today, we're doing a deep dive, a forensic analysis of one of the most cruel and effective criminal systems out there, the romance scam. And when I say they weaponize our need for connection, I'm not being dramatic. This is a deliberate, calculated process. They take one of our most basic human needs, the need for love, and they turn it into a tool for financial theft. You can think of it as a kind of psychological warfare, but it's waged against one person at a time. And the battlefield? Well, the battlefield is their heart. We're going to break down the entire model, from how they pick a target to the defense strategies you absolutely need to know. The defining cruelty of the romance scam is that the victim loses twice. First, the relationship they believed was real, and second, the life savings they sacrificed to protect it. This quote just nails the very core of this crime, this double-edged attack. I mean, think about it this way. Losing your money, that's like being robbed. It's terrible, it's a violation, but the emotional betrayal of a romance scam, that's like finding out your entire house, the one you've been living in, was never real to begin with. The foundation, the walls, the memories you thought you were building, it was all just a movie set, designed to make you feel safe while someone was emptying your pockets. That's the specific, profound cruelty we're talking about here. All right, so here's how we're gonna break this all down. And we're structuring it this way for a very specific reason. First, we have to understand the why, that cruel paradox and the psychology of the targeting, before we can really get into the how, their playbook and the traps they set. And only then can we build a defense that actually works. It's all about seeing the entire system from the inside out. So, we'll start with the paradox, we'll look at the targeting, deconstruct their playbook, uncover the psychological traps, and then we'll build your defense, finishing with a simple, protective mantra.
So let's start right there with this central, twisted idea. The criminal genius of this scam isn't about technical skill. They aren't hacking into your bank account, they're hacking into your heart. A computer hacker looks for a weak line of code. These social engineers, they look for vulnerabilities in our emotional code. Things like loneliness, a recent loss, or just a simple hope for the future. They don't need to write a single piece of malware because they convince the target to willingly hand over the keys to their own life.
This right here is the absolute key. Scammers go after what you could call your emotional operating system. Think of it like this. Your logical brain is the user on a computer, and your emotional center is the administrator with all the privileges. Normally, the user has to ask the admin for permission to do something risky, like wiring thousands of dollars to someone you've never met. But the scammer's goal is to become the new administrator. Through months of love bombing and constant validation, they bypass your logic entirely. So when they finally say, "We need this money for our future," it's not a request anymore. It's a command that the victim's brain now sees as a top priority, overriding every single alarm bell. Okay, so let's zoom out and look at the sheer scale of this operation. And before we get to the numbers, it's so important to remember that this isn't just data. Every single dollar represents a person whose life has been shattered, a retirement that's been stolen, a future that was promised and then just ripped away. The scale is industrial, but the damage is intensely personal. So let's look at the staggering financial impact and the core human vulnerability they've learned to weaponize with terrifying precision. Look at this number, $1.1 billion. And that's not a total over 10 years. That's how much victims lose every single year just in the United States, and that's only what gets reported. To put that in perspective, that's over $3 million stolen every single day. It's an economy bigger than that of some small countries. And get this, the FBI thinks only about 15% of these crimes ever get reported because victims feel so ashamed. The real number is probably way, way higher. This isn't a few people in a basement. It's a global criminal enterprise. And this chart just lays it all out. It brilliantly illustrates the financial dominance of this one type of fraud. And the reason for this huge difference you see here? It's the method. A phishing scam, that's a smash and grab. It's quick and the payout is usually pretty small. But a romance scam? That's a long con. It's more like a parasite. The scammer invests months to embed themselves in the victim's life. See, the goal isn't to just steal a credit card number. The goal is to take over the victim's entire financial decision-making process, which allows for the slow, systematic draining of every single asset they have, sometimes over years. So what's the front door for this billion-dollar industry? How do they get in? It's this: loneliness. Loneliness creates this powerful bias in our brains. It makes us much more likely to see what we want to see in people. And when someone is feeling truly isolated, the sudden arrival of a person who just showers them with attention, with validation, with a vision of a shared future, it can feel like a miracle. That intense relief from loneliness can completely overwhelm a person's natural skepticism. The scammer isn't just offering a relationship, they're offering an antidote to a deep and painful emotional state. And that makes their product incredibly seductive. So that brings us to the playbook itself. And we have to be crystal clear about this. This is a business model. It's not the work of some lone wolf who just happens to be charming. These are usually organized criminal syndicates. They have scripts, training manuals, even performance metrics. They have a customer acquisition strategy, a grooming process, a monetization phase, and an exit plan. And seeing it as a cold, calculated business is the first step to taking away its power. This is how they systematically build that attachment long before the first dollar is ever mentioned.
And here it is, the entire operation laid out. Phase 1 is targeting. They're like digital hunters, scanning social media and dating sites for keywords like widowed or divorced, using stolen photos of attractive people as bait. Phase 2, bonding and isolation. They create this intense one-on-one connection through constant contact. And moving the conversation to a private app like WhatsApp, that is a key strategic move. It's designed to cut you off from the watchful eyes of friends or the safety features of a dating site. Phase 3, the crisis trigger. This is timed perfectly, right after they've achieved maximum emotional dependency. And the emergency is always both terrible and impossible for you to verify. Phase 4, sustained extraction. This is where they test the limits, making up new crises to keep the money flowing. And finally, Phase 5, the exit. The second the money runs out, the supposed love of their life vanishes without a trace. This is the crucial moment, right here. Think of all those weeks and months leading up to this as the scammer's investment phase. They're investing their time, their emotional labor, they're learning about the victim's hopes, their fears, their family, their dreams. But every piece of personal information you share isn't building a romance. It's just data being collected. It's ammunition being stored up for this exact moment, to make that first financial request feel not like a stranger asking for money, but like a shared responsibility inside a deeply committed partnership. And here is where the manipulation just flips on its head. It is a masterful and evil use of social psychology. The request for money is reframed. It becomes, if you really love me, if you truly believe in us, you'll help. Suddenly, it's a test of your love and loyalty. It triggers what's called the reciprocity principle. The victim feels like they owe them something because of this huge gift of love and attention they've received. It also weaponizes your need for consistency. By asking, do you believe in our future? They force you to act in line with that belief. To say no would be a psychologically painful admission that this whole thing might be a lie.
And this creates what I call the psychological choke point. The scammer enforces total secrecy, and the language they use is incredibly clever. They'll say things like, our love is so special, your family just won't understand it. Or, I'm on a top secret mission, and if anyone finds out, I could go to jail. These stories are designed to do two things: create this powerful sense of us against the world, and make the victim feel like they're protecting their partner by lying to the very people who care about them. And that is how a smart, loving person can end up looking their own children in the eye and lying about where their life savings are going. Okay, so now we need to go a little deeper into the psychological mechanics that make this all possible. Why does a rational, intelligent person fall for this? It has nothing to do with intelligence. It's about the exploitation of very predictable human biases and psychological traps that can catch anyone when they're vulnerable. So let's look at the traps that really lock a victim in place and make it so hard to escape. The core psychological engine driving this whole scam is something called cognitive dissonance. And really, all that means is it's the deeply uncomfortable, stressful feeling you get when you're trying to hold two completely opposite ideas in your head at the same time. On one hand, you have, I have finally found my soulmate. And on the other, you have, my soulmate constantly needs money and his camera's always broken. To relieve that painful stress, something has to give. And the scammer has spent months making their story, the emotional one, feel incredibly real and powerful. This slide just lays out that internal battle perfectly. So why is it so much easier for the brain to dismiss the red flags? Because accepting the factual reality means accepting a catastrophic loss. It means admitting you were fooled. It means accepting that the love you felt, which felt so real, was a lie. That is a devastating psychological blow to absorb. In contrast, dismissing the red flags, oh, his phone must be old, or the internet is just bad where he is, that only requires a small mental adjustment. The brain almost always chooses the path of least emotional pain in the short term, which means doubling down on the fantasy. It's a defense mechanism they count on. Scammers are also experts at using classic principles of persuasion. Take scarcity. They're always creating urgency. The surgeon needs the payment in the next 30 minutes or they won't do the operation. That manufactured time pressure is designed to prevent logical thought. Then there's reciprocity. That constant stream of I love you texts and promises of a future together creates a sort of emotional debt in the victim's mind, making them feel like they owe them. And finally, commitment and consistency. This is the sunk cost fallacy. A victim thinks, I've already sent them $50,000. If I stop now, it's all gone. But if I just send this last $10,000, maybe that's the one that finally fixes everything and I'll get it all back. Each payment becomes a desperate attempt to prove the previous ones weren't a mistake. All right, we have deconstructed their entire criminal system. Now we shift to the most important part. Because here's the good news. While their psychological tactics are sophisticated, the defense against them is incredibly simple. This entire billion-dollar industry can be defeated by a few key actions. This isn't about being cynical or closing yourself off to love. It's about being sovereign over your own emotional and financial well-being. These are actionable steps you can use to protect yourself and the people you care about. Let's just walk through the pattern. It is almost always these 4 steps in this order. Step 1, you meet someone online and within a week, maybe 2, they're calling you their soulmate. That is a massive signal. Step 2, you suggest a video call. Suddenly there's an excuse. My camera's broken. The internet here is too weak. That's the second crucial signal. Step 3, just as you're supposed to finally meet, a huge crisis hits. They're stuck at the airport. They've been in an accident. The timing is never a coincidence. Step 4, they tell you they can't use their own bank, and you need to send money via gift cards, wire transfers, or cryptocurrency. If you see this 4-step sequence, you are not in a relationship. You are watching the execution of a criminal script. Okay, if there is one tool, one simple action you take away from all of this, let it be this. Perform a reverse image search on their profile photo. It takes 10 seconds. You can do it on your phone. Why is this a silver bullet? Because these scamming organizations operate at a massive scale. They can't create unique, original photos for every single victim. They have to rely on a library of stolen images that they use over and over and over again. A quick reverse image search will instantly show you if the photo of your supposed soulmate is actually a stock photo, a doctor from Texas, or an image that's been used in dozens of other documented scams. It is a simple action that can shatter the entire fiction in an instant. So what do you do if you find yourself in this situation? Here is the safe way out. First, a firm and final refusal to send any more money. Second, and this is the hardest but most critical part, do not argue. Do not explain. You will feel a desperate need to get them to confess, to get an apology, but you have to understand you are not talking to a real person with a conscience. You are talking to an operator running a script. Arguing with them is like arguing with a spam email. They will just use your pain and confusion to try and manipulate you further. The only winning move is to disengage, and then call their bluff by saying, I'm so worried I'm going to contact the local authorities where you are to help. Their reaction, which will almost always be panic or vanishing, will tell you everything you need to know. So we've analyzed the crime, the business model, the psychology, and the defense. But we need to boil all of this down into a single, simple principle. A mental firewall that you can carry with you. Something that can protect you in a moment of emotional vulnerability. This is the core idea that summarizes the entire defense strategy. And this brings us right back to where we started. For decades, we've been told to focus on our digital security. Strong passwords, two-factor authentication, firewalls. But this entire criminal industry proves that the single biggest vulnerability we have isn't in our computers, it's in our own hearts. So true security isn't just about building higher digital walls, it's about developing emotional awareness. It's about learning to apply the same kind of critical thinking to a new online relationship that you would to a major financial decision. It's about giving yourself permission to verify before you allow yourself to be vulnerable. So, let this be your protective mantra. Never let the promise of a future justify the ruin of your present. Scammers sell a fantasy future, a perfect life together that is always just one more payment away. This mantra is your anchor to reality. It's a reminder that any relationship that demands you sacrifice your current financial security, your peace of mind, and your relationships with your actual family for some promised tomorrow, that is not a relationship. It is an extraction. Remember this. Never let the promise of a future justify the ruin of your present.